Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We want to welcome you to this fourth episode of the webinar series, Arab Social Protection Compass, that's looking at integrated approaches for universal social protection. This session is on laying the institutional groundwork for integrated systems, looking at Oman. The series aims to recognize a trend, but also to better understand how, in pursuit of the goal of universal social protection, countries around the region are seeking greater integration of their systems in different ways. So the series spotlights different experiences with types and different degrees of integration as a way to spark national reflection, national dialogue in the region, but also beyond the region, where these same questions may also resonate. So the series looks at both the theoretical, so here we're thinking about the rationale for pursuing integration. Why is integration important? What do we think might happen when we integrate? But also the more practical bits and pieces, the implementation. It seeks to really draw the links between the policy side and the administrative aspects of the reform. And in this respect, the series is jointly presented by the ILO and the ISSA, which really makes that link, I think, come out quite strongly. So as I said, this is the fourth episode. This episode was preceded by three previous ones. The first one was the launch episode of the series, which focused on the Oman policy reforms. So that was really the what of the reforms that Oman has embarked upon over the last year or three. The second episode looked at migrant workers and social protection in the Arab region. And the last episode was looking at spotlighting progress toward implementing integrative reforms in Morocco. The next slide, please. Sorry, I'm talking about the session already, but this current episode, as I said, it builds on that first launch episode on Oman, and it moves us away from the what of the reforms, which if you're curious, by all means, we encourage you to go back and look at the recordings. Some links will be shared. This one will take a closer look at the how. So how are you actually moving from policy to administration? And those of us who engage with but also observe national reforms know that lofty ideals that are expressed on paper about universal social protection, even when those are articulated in clear policies, they're all well and good, but nothing is real until it can actually be put into practice in a meaningful and in a concerted way. And as we'll hear today, Oman has wasted no time in moving from policy design to practice and has built a deceptively simple, well-oiled integrated organization we'll hear more about to deliver merged pensions, but also a whole menu of new rights-based benefits and protections. Next slide. Before we hear from the speakers, just some housekeeping. Remember that the session is being recorded. We also make available closed captioning, so you can automatically see, if you click on the CC button, you can see the captions as we're speaking. And there's also simultaneous interpretation, Arabic to English, so and vice versa. So please choose from the button at the bottom of the menu which language you would like to listen to the webinar in, and then you shouldn't have to change anything after that. Next slide. Just a quick overview of the flow, the agenda. We'll have some welcoming remarks from Luca Pellerano from the ILO. Then we'll turn over to the main presentations. We'll hear from two people from the Social Protection Front in Oman and some discussants. We'll then follow with question and answer. At that time, you should feel free to pose questions in the Q&A box that we will be able to return to during the Q&A time, and we'll finally close. Just a note that you can also introduce yourself and share links if you want to in using the chat function, which is different from the Q&A. So again, if you have a question for the speakers or for the discussants, please put that in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. I think social media, that's clear. Yes, next slide, please. So I'm really pleased about the speakers that we have today. As I mentioned, we've got Luca Pellerano, who's the Senior Regional Specialist at the ILO Regional Office for Arab States, who will be opening officially this webinar. Next, we'll turn to our speakers from Oman's Social Protection Fund. First, we'll have Dr. Hamdan Al-Farsi, who is Governance, Risk, and Compliance Manager at the Social Protection Fund. And he'll be followed by Ibtihal Al-Riyami, who is a human capital expert, also at the fund. And following that, we're really pleased to be able to welcome three discussants who will bring different perspectives, external perspectives, on the implementation process of the reforms. First, we'll turn to my colleague, Ernesto Brodersohn, who is from the ISSA, Senior Officer in Social Security here at the International Social Security Association. Following Ernesto, we'll have Mr. Amer bin Mansour Azri, I hope I haven't ruined that, who is the Director of Legal Affairs Department for the General Federation of Oman Workers. And finally, we'll hear from Bilal Al-Kiswani, who is Program Manager at UNICEF Oman. So without further ado, as I said, I'm Shea McClanahan. I'm a Senior Officer in Social Security and Social Policies at the ISSA. I'll be your moderator. And now let me hand over to you, Luca.
Thank you, Shea, for the introduction, and I hope you can all hear me fine. Good morning, good afternoon from Beirut. As Shea mentioned, my name is Luca Pellerano. I'm the Regional Social Protection Specialist for the ILO, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this session. I would like to acknowledge the great collaboration with the ISSA, between the ILO and ISSA, on the organization of the series of Compass, Social Protection Compass webinars for the Arab states. We hope this continues to be a space for us to reflect, share experiences amongst practitioners in the region who have at heart the issues of social protection, the development of rights-based, inclusive, universal social protection systems. I'm talking to you today from Beirut, and I cannot but say a few words about of solidarity to the people of Lebanon and to what is happening to Lebanon and in the region. We see another wave of violence that affects people of the region, and perhaps while it feels distant, we recognize once more the importance of social protection for this region, for a country like Lebanon, as people flee from the south in search of safe havens from violence and conflict. Countries such as Lebanon are have to rely on a very stretched social protection system. And I think that's one more reason for us practitioners in the Arab region to relaunch the agenda of social protection, not just as one that can provide the necessary support at times of crisis, such as the one that many families are going through these days, not just in Lebanon, in Gaza, in other parts of the region affected by violence and conflict, but also perhaps more fundamentally as a key ingredient of a new definition of a relationship between citizens and the state, which is framed around rights to social security as a core human right. About a role with the state that can provide that support to live through critical work and life transitions. And certainly the purpose of the webinar series is to take inspiration from each other, to take inspiration in this journey of building universal, wide encompassing rights-based social protection systems. And we're very glad that we can take another look at Oman as a reference point for the region in this effort at building strong national social protection systems. As Shea mentioned, we already took a look in the first episode of the webinar at perhaps the more policy dimension of the recent reforms in Oman, the type of schemes, the ambition of those schemes that really put in place a vision for universal access to social protection to all people in Oman across all life cycle risks. and in a way that really aims at leaving no one behind, including with the very progressive steps toward the extension of social protection to non-national workers and their families. Today, we shift the attention to another very important dimension of Oman reforms, one where certainly Oman is a pioneer as a laboratory of experimentation for the region, and this has to do more with the institutional underpinning, with the architecture, with the structures that will allow the delivery of this new ambitious set of social protection scheme to people living in Oman. Oman is the first country in the region that takes this bold direction of bringing under one single roof, one single streamlined institution, contributory and government-funded benefits. And this opens complete new territory for the integration of these schemes from a perspective of administration, financing, client management, investment management, etc. It's a very complex exercise, one that has required the merger of different institutions, the setting up of a new governance framework, of a new board, of new functions within this board, of a new institution itself called the Social Protection Fund. And it's also a reform that comes as a result of years of national consultation, national dialogue, which has involved different actors, including workers, employers organization, the so-called social partners, but also different parts of government, the different ministries, all involved in their respective role in the building of this important reform. So we're here really today to get insights from our colleagues in Muscat on what has been learned through this process, what has been the driver of this ambition, and what's expected from it, as the country is very seriously going through implementation of all these institutional changes. And we're here perhaps also to read a bit between the line what has been the politics, what has been the political economy, how come such a tremendous progress has been achieved in a relatively short period of time, what are some of the lessons learned that other countries in the region can draw from the experience, and what are perhaps the remaining areas of challenge that all of us who accompany these reform processes will have to look for moving ahead. So I will really leave it at this as an opening intro. Once more, I would like to thank all of you participants, but most especially all the panelists who have accepted the invitation to share with us their experience, their perspectives from Oman, also the discussants, both from ISSA and from UNICEF, as well as a representative from social partners. We really want to wish you a good conversation today, and we hope that this exchange continues in the coming weeks, in the coming episodes of this recurrent session, and very much encourage you to actively participate in the discussion. All the best, and the floor back to you, Shea.
Thank you, Luca. And indeed, sending all our best thoughts to those in Beirut, to you, and all those affected. And yes, absolutely, this punctuates, I think, the vital importance of social protection, both in good times and in bad. So we're going to turn now to our main speakers, what we've all been waiting for, to set the stage for us, to tell us more about the ins and the outs of Oman's ambitious institutional consolidation. So first we have with us Dr. Hamdan Al-Farsi, who, as I mentioned, is the Governance, Risk and Compliance Manager at the newly created Social Protection Fund in Oman, and he'll be talking to us about governance and institutional setup to try to walk us through how we got to this point, what were sort of the arguments or the rationale for building this single institution, but also what was the situation before and after, and how does it work in practice to have all of these functions housed under the same roof, under the same board, and in the same institution. Over to you, Dr. Hamdan.
Thank you very much, Shea, for the introduction. And allow me, please, to switch to Arabic language, since the presentation is in Arabic.
In the name of God, the merciful, the Almighty, allow me first of all to thank the colleagues in the ILO and in the ISSA. Thank you for having organized the session on the restructuring of the pension and the social protection systems in the Sultanate of Oman. In fact, the presentation is made of 4 acts. First, a brief overview of the project. We'll give you a brief overview of the project first. And then, second, we'll be talking about the governance before the merger. Third, governance after merger, governance of the system. And last but not least, we'll be talking about the governance of the Social Protection Fund. The restructuring of the pension and social protection systems in Oman is made of 2 parts. The first part is related to the administrative merger or integration. It's merging the assets and obligations of all the pension funds in Oman, and we mean by that 11 funds, in one central entity called the Social Protection System Fund. And the aim is to find a central entity much more efficient in delivering the social protection services to all the beneficiaries and also developing assets and investments. The administrative merger aims at implementing the vision and the policies of the government related to the social protection in order to provide the decent social protection coverage and the fair social protection coverage to all the categories of the society. The second part of the project is finding a new system and launching or establishing a new social protection law. And the system is made of 2 parts as well. First, the social programs, and these programs are characterized with adding new categories such as maternity leaves, sick leaves, extraordinary leaves, and also health insurance coverage. New categories have been added also to the insurance programs, and this relates to the non-Omani workers. And as I've said before, the idea was to find a standardized system for the different pension systems or funds. The second part is the social protection in the system, and here we're talking about 5 main benefits: the elderly benefits, benefits for the handicapped, and also the income for the different households. The social protection law was rendered on the 17th of July 2023, and the implementation started on the 1st of January 2021, 6 months after the law was established. Of course, the project was implemented based on 4 main factors, as you can see in the slide. First, the governance, and this is what I'm going to talk about today, the human capital, managing change, and this is what the colleague Ibtihal is going to talk about, the communication and IT element, and this is what we will be talking about in the future discussion sessions. The pre-merger governance. So we have the decree 33 on 2024 was issued. It's related to the pension funds and social protection, and based on that, there was a committee made of the Council of Ministers that was formed, and it supervises the implementation of the merger of funds. And this committee was entrusted with 4 main tasks. The first task was related to supervising the necessary constraints and completing the different measures related to the rights, obligations, and assets of all the 11 pension funds. This committee was also entrusted with establishing measures and restructuring the social protection systems, and also launching the Social Protection Fund and the Military Fund. This committee was entrusted with preparing the draft law for the social protection. The management of the project was the duty of the National Committee within the framework of the National Program for the Financial Sustainability and the Development of the Financial Sector. And this program resulted in an office for the management of the project, and it was made of technical teams as well as consultants from the ILO and the UNICEF in order to provide support in this regard to all the technical task forces. The technical task forces were entrusted with designing the social protection system and working on drafting the law, and also the media campaign management of the project, and also working on having a structural management of the fund, as well as preparing the necessary infrastructure for the IT, and also preparing for a system of investment and assets management of the fund. The second stage was right after the adoption of the social protection system design and after preparing the draft law. And back then, the office of the project was established. The idea was to design the system through different working procedures. So the office has convened at different levels: the level of investment, governance, human resources, the financial level, contributions level, administrative affairs level, the management of different documents, the IT, and the legal process. After issuing the social protection system and the social protection law, the third stage has started, whereby an office was created and it was entrusted with transferring the work that has been done by the constitutive office to the executive administration that was entrusted with following up on all the works that have been done. With regards to governance, after merger, the post-governance merger is based on 5 main characteristics. First, the Sultanate Decree for the year 2021, when it comes to the pension regimes and the social protection system, and also another decree in 2020, and the decree 2050 on 2023 on the social protection, as well as the decision number 7 for the year 2023 when it comes to issuing the executive procedures for the social protection, not to mention as well the different guidelines for the ISSA regarding the rational governance. Of course, in this slide, I'd like to say that I would like to talk about the main guidelines of the rational governance of ISSA, and of course, these were main standards and norms that we have adopted. When it comes to the post-merger governance, there was a committee that was established at the level of the Council of Ministers. It's about the Social Protection Committee, and this committee was entrusted with ensuring complementarity between politics and the different sectors. As clear in this chart, this committee has a secretariat that would collaborate with the Social Security Fund as well as the Military Fund. As clear in this chart, the board of directors would supervise the social protection system as well as managing the different investments. And there is a committee also that would be established, and it would coordinate with the different entities that would provide social services to the different beneficiaries. And we would like here to talk about the role of the different military personnel. It's in fact managing the social protection schemes for the different beneficiaries and for the different military retirees, and also managing the system of benefits. When it comes to the governance of the Social Protection Fund, in the Sultanate Decree 50 on 2024, so we have specific demands on the governance for the Social Protection Fund. First, establishing the board of directors of the fund, including a tripartite representation, whereby we have representatives of the government as well as the workers and employers, as well as 2 independent members of the people not working in the administrative apparatus of the state. And also it involves the board of directors, the different committees, and there should be also an internal section inside of the board of directors. There should be also a policy outside of the meetings. So we are going to be submitting all the activities of the fund. And of course, there will be an annual report of the different activities of the fund to the Council of Ministers within 4 months after the end of every year. And the report would include a summary of the work of the fund, as well as the different reports on the accounts, the work plan for the fund, and the assessment of the work of the fund compared to the previous year, and to which extent the goals have been achieved, and the reason behind not achieving any of the goals within the action plan, as well as assessing the efficiency of the social protection programs, and also assessing the efficiency of the empowerment rehabilitation programs, as well as the coordination with the different parties in order to adapt them to the different initiatives.
This royal decree also included different policies and procedures. The Social Protection Fund should be preparing these policies and procedures, including the Code of Professional Conduct, the Disclosure Policy, Whistleblowing Policy, Investment Policies, Risk Management Regulations, Financial and Administrative Affairs Regulations, Tender List. This is in addition to the transactions and dealings with different parties, information confidentiality policies, human resources policies, in addition to the appointment of external auditors, and finally, the stakeholder communication policies. I will briefly present supervision. There are two types of supervision in the Social Protection Fund, internal and external. In the internal supervision, we rely on the first line of defense, which includes the executive management. It is responsible for maintaining effective controls and managing risks and control procedures on a daily basis. The second line of defense includes governance, risk management, and compliance, as well as information security and quality. It works to ensure that the risk management, control, and compliance processes implemented by the first line of defense are appropriately designed. The third line of defense includes the internal audit, provides independent assurance on governance, risk management, and control processes. Whereas external supervision also includes two components. First, the external auditing bodies, such as the State Financial and Administrative Control Authority, which is a state authority. And second, external auditors appointed. There are also other regulatory bodies, such as the Cyber Defense Center, the Ministry of Transport, the Communications and Information Technology. Finally, I would like to say that the fund is currently working on preparing a comprehensive governance guide in accordance with the best practices to clearly cover the limits, responsibilities, and roles of the board of directors, its committees, its executive management, in addition to the different policies and procedures. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hamdan. As I said before, deceptively simple. So we hear words like single institution, integration, and we might think simple, but in fact, behind setting that up are a whole array of complex tasks, to-do lists in order to set up an efficient delivery system. And I think efficient was a key word that we heard over and over again. We'll have further reactions later on from our discussants to what was presented on the governance side. I think, Ibtihal, if you can start to share, I'll introduce your presentation. So next we're going to hear from Ibtihal Al-Riyami, who's human capital expert at the Social Protection Fund, and she'll be talking to us more about organizational change and lessons from this change management process, both with regard to the merger of the pension funds and also with the setup of establishing the SPF itself. As we know, once a policy decision is made, there's still this daunting task of this to-do list. And I think as human capital expert, you, Ibtihal, will have a very interesting and unique vantage point for how all of this was put into practice. Merging comes with financial, logistical, organizational, political challenges. So tell us in your presentation what stands out for you as the big challenges and how they were overcome or expect to be overcome as you continue this process. Ibtihal, over to you.
Peace be upon you, everyone. In my presentation, I would like to say that it would be very difficult for me to summarize my presentation in 10 minutes, but here I would like to focus on the most important initiatives and procedures that we have implemented.
I think we've lost your connection, but I can see it now again. So if you can start talking again and we'll see if it's been restored. Okay.
Apologies, because technologies always come with challenges. As I was saying, human capital can be very beneficial to achieve our objectives, but at the same time, it is a challenge. But perhaps instead of using the word challenge, we can say that this is one of the main priorities. After the merger, we had to focus on human capital, on technology and governance. Dr. Hamdan spoke about governance, and that is why I will move to focusing on the human capital. I will present now some of the challenges that we have faced. First, it was a completely new system. We have merged 11 funds. 3 human capital funds were merged, but there was a diversity of work environments and competencies in these different funds. We had to take that into consideration. With a new law, the employees also saw challenges in understanding the content of the law. The systems have changed. We were used to a certain system, and the employees now have to get accustomed and understand those challenges and new systems. But first and foremost, they have to accept change. These changes in their workplace, in their employment. They sometimes have additional and new tasks and responsibilities for the fund, which also means that the employees have the same. We also had the transfer of employees in the executive structure, either to supervisory positions or professional positions. Before I start with this journey of change management, let's agree on how we have defined change management in the fund. Our objective was to develop strategies and initiatives for this transitional phase. We need to make sure that the environment created in this new fund is appropriate for achieving our strategic objectives. Before we started with that journey, we also relied on 2 examples on how change impacts employees. First, we have the change chart. This applies to everyone, not only to employees. We start with the acceptance, or rather, we start with refusal. And slowly, bit by bit, they move into accepting that change. We wanted to rely on our initiatives to eventually reach full acceptance. Sometimes it is very beneficial for the employees to see objectives and good qualities of such a change before accepting it. When we prepared this plan, we had in mind different goals. First, reducing resistance and tensions, improving the quality of services provided to customers, to continue doing so, to continue providing services and improving its quality, which also means ensuring operational continuity and implementing the adopted strategic vision. Finally, ensuring smooth integration of employees into the new corporate culture. We have used the change management steps in the transformation phase, and I will explain to you the chart here to explain the different steps. There are some tools, change management tools, that we have used, such as town hall meetings with the executive management, pulse check, continuously measuring the pulse of change, change gathering, change meetings with the supervisors to make sure that they understand the objective of this change, engagement surveys to measure the extent of employees' commitment to the fund and work on initiatives that raise commitment rates, explaining the major project, which is project awareness, some awareness campaigns, and finally, leadership engagement to ensure that leaders are informed and involved in the different stages of change. A team was established to manage this change, and the team was also tasked with preparing the change strategy, monitoring its implementation, monitor and analyze the impact of change at the organizational level, preparing programs and initiatives that contribute to the fund's delivery. I'm trying to be as quick as possible because of the short time. The first challenge we faced was the first day challenge. In other terms, the institution had to provide services for all the beneficiaries. We have seen different types of change. First, logistical change, such as transferring employees to a new location. There needed to be coordination for the transfer dates and how to prepare the employees smoothly. We coordinated with them. We tried to prepare them in advance on the positive aspect of being brought together in one place with a small reception, a simple celebration, and a small gift distributed to them. The career change may be the biggest change, which also comes with emotional change for employees. We have prepared communication plans with them to discuss the next stages, to explain what will happen next, what is the plan set by the fund to deal with upcoming changes. We also had some trainings on the IT systems, and we also ensured that every employee received a personal email on the changes affected them. Certainly, we also had leadership preparation, continuous mentoring program for leaders to support them in this change phase. In order to embed change in the corporate culture, we had the first town hall meeting between the COO and the employees. This meeting wanted to provide an opportunity for employees to understand more the strategy of the fund and how employees can take an active part.
Okay. Ibtihal, we lost you for a minute again, so I'm going to ask you to restart and try to wrap up in about 3 or 4 minutes. You're on mute. The last slide, we can't see the slide. The last slide we saw was slide 30. Yes.
One of the initiatives that we have launched is the Ambassadors for Change initiative. The objective of Ambassadors of Change was to spread the change culture in the corporate culture, to support creative thinking, to participate in various change projects, to build and consolidate strong and effective relationships among employees coming from different funds, develop the ability to innovate, creating team spirit and cooperation. All employees could apply to Ambassadors of Change. We analyzed the applicants. 68 employees applied. We notified those employees who were accepted. 41 employees were accepted in the Ambassadors of Change initiative. We prepared a meeting to discuss with them what are the challenges, in their opinion, the fund is facing and how to deal with them. And finally, we had change management initiatives at this level to analyze and implement different initiatives. Furthermore, amongst the other tools used, we have applied measuring job engagement. If job engagement increases, it means that the institution will be more efficient. That is why we have analyzed job engagement based on a dedicated platform. We also prepared a long employee happiness plan. The plan objectives were to enhance communication and interaction between employees, ensuring an attractive work environment, increasing loyalty and job satisfaction, create a positive and motivating work environment, and activating the concept of employee engagement. In this plan, we organized multiple events, most importantly, this initiative included multiple events that also sought to achieve employee happiness. As we said before, evaluation and assessment is important to continually assess and measure the situation. Recently, we also organized an event for mental health promotion activity to increase job satisfaction and to understand more the mental health situation, because certainly change would lead to anxiety. The interpreters are unable to hear the speaker, whose sound is breaking.
Okay, I think we've lost Ibtihal, but she was coming to the end, so I will allow her some closing words later on for what we've missed. And I think both of the presentations have really highlighted the importance of a carefully managed transition process, both at the highest level of governance, all the way down to managing human resources. Ibtihal, if you don't mind, we're going to move on to the discussants and we'll allow you a chance to wrap up at the end. Thank you so much for your presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn to my colleague Ernesto Brodersohn, who is the senior officer in Social Security here at ISSA, who really dives in deep on these management and governance questions. So Ernesto is someone who observes change management processes and governance processes in Social Security organizations globally. What do you make of Oman's recent reforms and the magnitude of the change that it required? Over to you, Ernesto.
Thank you very much, Shea. I was first, thank you for having me, and I was really impressed by, for sure, the holistic nature, as you mentioned, on the approach in a merger of social security institutions. And I want to highlight a couple of things that are really, I'm very happy and really glad to hear that first, the merger of social security institutions is a very long-term process, as we heard. No, it took, I think, from the early 2020, to actually start a process of merger, identifying the stakeholders and interacting and engaging in a very delicate balance of, I'm sure, was listening, adjusting, and collaboration between different stakeholders, which as the first presenter, Hamdan, was actually mentioning, are part of the core principles of governance that do require significant accountability and transparency and stakeholder participation, which are part of the core principles of governance that he mentioned, which are part of our guidelines, which I'm happy that they do and have supported social security institutions like SFP in this merger. I was also really impressed about this multi-tiered approach to internal oversight, which is something that is not something that common, but it's really impressive to understand and understand what are these first line of defenses and how these different oversight structures help within the institution and how they collaborate with external oversight in ensuring that the performance and effectiveness of new organizations are in place and are managing and capitalizing really on the operational performance that is aimed for in many of the mergers that we see, which are not that many because of the complexities. As you mentioned, it seems simple when you put it in a PowerPoint, but it's been years in the making. It's really interesting to see. For sure, it's a tip of the iceberg to understand the administrative simplifications and the improved mention of the quality of services that was actually gained from all these. And I really think it's what's also worth really highlighting is this change management approach to organizational structures that is not only around the governance structure, around simply putting governance models together, but actually being able to collaborate between different social security institutions and the change management structure. It's as much as social protection as it is protecting people and protecting change itself, and encouraging this change structure that it even goes as deep as the last bit that we heard around even mental health. That change indeed builds anxiety, and it's one of the challenges that we see in many different changes that exist in social security institutions. I really like the very proactive approaches that were mentioned, and the change ambassadors is actually a fairly innovative term. We've seen it in other projects that are more specific to digital transformation projects, but change ambassadors in a broader concept with a human capital, understanding the capacities, the skills, and the mindset of different social security institutions, and what I'm sure must have been a really interesting experience. And I just want to highlight what I think we saw only a glimpse of one of the slides, I think, around the employee satisfaction, making sure that people feel included as part of the change, and how this affects them more from the work environment, as well as they feel identified and they own this process of change, and they participate in this change of the new institution. So just a few comments on a very lengthy presentation, really complete and really interesting to have this documented, and really happy to be participating in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernesto. I think up until now, we have been thinking a lot about the organization itself and the challenges of putting it into practice. We're going to raise our eyes a bit to the political economy aspects. And I'm going to turn now to Mr. Amer, who is the director of the Legal Affairs Department of the General Federation of Oman Workers. Mr. Amer, the trade union movement has played a really important role in advocating for comprehensive access to social protection in Oman. And we'd like to know, from your perspective, what the new law, why it was important that the new law would cover both private and public sector workers under the same roof. Of course, that wasn't the case before. So why was that important? Who was the hardest to convince in this process? What are some of the key concerns of the trade unions? As an SPF board member, we know that the board is tripartite from the presentation, and also just in general as the new law is being implemented. Over to you, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, and peace be upon you. Welcome everyone in this webinar. Thank you for inviting me to attend this important session, and I would like to thank the previous speakers for their presentations and the very valuable insights. As regards the trade unions in the Sultanate of Oman and the General Federation of Oman Workers, as regards the reforms, I would like to say that trade unions in Oman have played an effective role in this regard, because ever since the establishment of the General Federation, we started focusing on the pension system for workers in the private sector, especially. This was a major issue for the workers in the private sector. It was one of the main challenges that would impact their stability and would impact them whether they wanted to decide staying in the private sector or not. That is why workers needed to spend at least 32 years in order to get the maximum pension contributions, and they needed to reach the 60 years of age. At the same time, the workers could not bring together the pension and end of service benefits. That is why the General Federation of Oman Workers focused a lot on this issue. The activities that we have organized in 2011 led to some major progress with increasing the pension paid to the workers in the private sector. Furthermore, in 2011, we became members in the Social Protection Fund, which was an important step. There are 2 independent members that would also be part of the board of directors of the Social Protection Fund. This was very important for us, whereas in the past, the Minister of Labor used to choose 2 employees to represent the employees. That is why we have also submitted a request to the Shura Council. We have submitted our observations on the law to the Shura Council, or in other terms, the State Council. And we have taken into consideration the opinions of all trade unions to hear their comments on the law. And the letter that we have addressed to the head of the State Council, we have called for unifying the funds, the pension funds in the Sultanate, so as to provide the same benefits for everyone, for all of the workers working in the country. The General Federation also worked on restructuring the social aspects of the law. We made our comments on the law in 2013, and we have seen the improvement of the system to ensure that the pension was higher, based on a higher basis. In multiple events, we have also stated that unifying the pension systems would be an important step to bridge the gaps between workers in both the private and the public sectors. In 2019, we had a general conference based on which we have issued in our recommendations the necessity for improving and reforming the different social security legislations. There are multiple issues that I may not have enough time to discuss here, but this is to say that trade unions and the General Federation of Oman Workers have played an effective role in reaching these reforms. Now, as regards the importance of having one comprehensive law bringing together everyone, one unified standardized law that covers all workers in both private and public sectors. To answer your question, I would like to say that this was one of the main challenges that also hindered job opportunities, or hindered people from moving between both sectors. Usually people did not want to join the private sector because the main challenge they faced was the pension system, although this is a sector that had a lot of skills and competencies. Answering your question, who was harder to convince? Maybe all the stakeholders were already convinced about the necessity of merging these funds and standardizing the system. The economic experts and actuarial experts have also discussed and analyzed the situation. 5 funds were also facing issues and difficulties, and their financial position may have been depleted by 2030. And that is why creating this comprehensive and standardized system would create an atmosphere and an environment of fairness and justice amongst all workers. The major issue was the additional costs that would be required for any new system, for any better system. And certainly, who would be paying the bigger cost? But on the other hand, this new system will also be providing benefits that cannot be covered by the previous system, such as maternity, paternity, and sickness. And it will also help achieve better stability for workers in their positions, which eventually would be very beneficial.
With regards to the main fears, I believe that the social protection law is just like any other law. It is sometimes it would suffer from lacks sooner or later. This is why there should be kind of a periodic review that would take into consideration the economic and social changes so that the law would achieve its objective as being an integrated social protection regime. As we've seen in the presentation of Dr. Hamdan, there is a report to be submitted to the Board of Directors, and the Board of Directors would submit annual reports to the Temporary Council of Ministers. However, if we are to talk about the main concerns, I will be talking about one of the branches of social insurance. It aims at providing temporary insurance, which is the functional security branch, that is services provided to the beneficiary. So in fact, that would be given monthly for a period of maximum 6 months, and the beneficiary should accept all job opportunities provided by the Ministry of Labor. But in reality, it may seem that we don't have job opportunities for the beneficiary during the period of time. And this has led the government to give this amount more than one time. And the period stated by the law may not be adapted to the employment reality in Oman, while also giving kind of a clear definition of this branch, which is a social protection regime that covers the risks of the end of service out of the will of the beneficiary, whereby the person would have a temporary income to help him to find a job opportunity, so that this amount would be continuous for a period of time that would naturally cover the period needed by the insured so that he would have a job opportunity. When it comes to compared legislations in this regard, we would find that the amount of that unemployment would be more than the average of the time given to search for a job. For example, in France, that average search for a job may take 5 to 6 months based on the National Institute of Statistics in France, whereby that period for giving that income by the state might be maybe 24 months. And this applies as well to other countries. In the United States, reports of the Statistical Institute would show that the average of a job search would go from 10 to 20 weeks, whereby the maximum to give that pension would be 26 weeks. In Germany, it's 24 months. In Denmark, 24 months. In Sweden, 14 months. Norway, 24. Netherlands, 24. Australia, it's not defined. It depends on the status of work. In Japan, 12 months. And I'd like to end by saying that Article 119 of the Social Protection Law has established the legal framework for the mechanisms to amend the value of the amount and the maximum period of dispersing this amount after having studied the cost with the decision of the director of the fund and after approval of the Council of Ministers. I think that this is one of the challenges that should be reconsidered currently in order to achieve the main objective behind this insurance branch. So in order to provide the protection and safety to the insured so that he could find or until he finds an alternative job opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amer, for these reflections. I think there's a lot to chew on, and hopefully in our discussion later, we'll come back to some of these points. But just to reiterate that you mentioned the importance of improving attractiveness of private sector jobs, but also the ability to move back and forth between public sector and private sector. And I think that's really important to emphasize that in integration projects, you're actually responding to increased flexibility, but also you're creating opportunities for increased flexibility. So that is an important part of bringing these under a single umbrella. Also, you mentioned in terms of convincing people and getting people on board, there was this financial imperative for some of the funds, and that I will direct people to the previous webinar on policy where some of that rationale was laid out, but indeed extremely important. And also just the last point to highlight before we turn over to our third and final discussant was the importance of periodic review and embedding periodic review. And we saw already that the Social Protection Fund is putting in place very close monitoring mechanisms. And I think linking those to the policy targets itself, especially you mentioned in the case of unemployment benefits. So if there are questions around the specific parameters, policy parameters that were chosen, well, in fact, with good targets, you can test that. You can test that out over time. So very much appreciated those reflections. And now I'm going to shift gears slightly to turn to Bilal Al-Kiswani, who's program manager at UNICEF Oman. Bilal, we're going to shift over to the links between cash and services. So there's growing recognition around the world that this is a really important linkage to strengthen. UNICEF works on this issue very closely in different countries and has been working in Oman as well to support this integrated rollout. What can you tell us about these emerging priorities and entry points in Oman that aim to bring about this linkage, this stronger linkage between cash and services? How do you foster this coordination between the stakeholders that are involved in delivering social care and services, but also income support? Over to you, Bilal.
Thank you so much, Shea, for having me, and my appreciation to colleagues in ISSA ILO for this initiative. I would like to really start by appreciating the presentation we saw from Dr. Hamdan and Ms. Ibtihal on both governance and change management. And as my colleagues Ernesto and Amer pointed, it is really quite a substantive and impressive progress that has been achieved in relatively short period. And the achievement there comes in two lines. One is at the legislative level, the policy level, where we see the social protection law and all the frameworks that Dr. Hamdan highlighted. And at the same, in parallel, we see all the consolidation process and convergence. And what I see there is the level of comprehension. It's a very comprehensive policy as well as consolidation process. In Dr. Hamdan's presentation, he referred to a committee where it is mandated to look at the social benefits and how to link them across all of the sectors. So in this framework, I want to say the child benefit, the benefit for disability, the low-income family benefits are really setting Oman ahead in providing the social protection guarantees, making them as a fundamental right for the groups which are in need, universal child benefits, the disability benefits, and others. And these schemes opens the way, gives an entry point for us to advance key areas of relevance to these groups and of relevance to children. when we speak about linkages between social protection and services, we have to start by the outcome that we would like to achieve. Let's take, for example, how to advance the agenda on disability inclusion and make that, as is the case for Oman, the objective. To achieve that, we need number of interventions, including cash, as well as programmatic interventions related to social care, medical care, and other components. One component alone is insufficient to really provide and deliver on the vision of disability inclusion. And here comes the concept of Cash Plus. It is a package of interventions tailored to achieve a specific outcomes. And I started with the disability inclusion example because this is one of the key entry points we are seeing in Oman, where one thing is the social protection law, the work of the social protection fund with the disability fund, which is really a huge step forward, but also in the social sector, including the Ministry of Social Developments, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, who are really working increasingly on disability inclusion. And where we see a lot of focus on looking forward towards governance structures which are multi-sectorals that can bring all of these actors together, where we see a demand on mainstreaming, how we can identify needs, respond to them, and have a mainstreamed system that can ensure that this group needs are identified and followed on. Other entry points in Oman is, I think, linked to the low-income families benefits. And I think for this group, as the social protection keep advancing the agenda and the implementation of the law, it will be really interesting to look at the specific needs of this group. How can we ensure that low-income families have equitable access to quality education, to adequate nutrition, and nutrition in Oman, as we see from the recent very successful SDG voluntary national report that Oman did, is high on the agenda, where we see issues related to obesity, feeding practices that require enhancement, and this file is really to connect families to the available services, but also work with them to improve knowledge and awareness around these areas. Not to take long, the Cash Plus is really has a great and a golden opportunity with the existing framework of governance, law, and the schemes provided. The key areas to advance this agenda is to identify those priorities: disability inclusion, early childhood development with focus on nutrition, and then look at the key pillars to do that. One is the multi-sectoral approach. How can we bring everyone to the table? The second one is how to mainstream the process of identifying them, responding them using case management and referrals. Then looking on how to implement, which is the social workforce and the linked MIS. And definitely, I would like to echo the point that you and also my colleagues mentioned, the importance of really documenting this process moving forward and setting the baseline and seeing the impact of this impressive progress that Oman is achieving, because this is very relevant to keep improving the process moving forward, as well as documenting and sharing with other countries. Oman is well advanced in many sustainable development goals, and with the SPF and the linking it to the social services, progress can be accelerated on the entry points I flagged here. Thank you for the opportunity again, and I really look forward to the conversation and colleagues' insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bilal, for those excellent reflections on disability inclusion, but also on intersectoral coordination. on what it means for concepts and frameworks like Cash Plus to bring these reforms to life in a context like Oman, to bring cash benefits really to life. So let's return. I'm going to invite us to return to that question of sectoral coordination, because we got a glimpse of it in Dr. Hamdan's presentation, but I'm going to see if he can maybe take us a bit further on that question. So we know, and we've learned today, that the SPF is primarily responsible for administering all of the cash benefits, both contributory and non-contributory, and that is a huge feat in and of itself. But of course, no single institution can do everything or should do everything. So we need to understand a bit more about these other functions that remained outside or peripheral to the Social Protection Fund, whether that's policymaking authority, social work related functions, other functions. So what can you tell us? We'll start with you, Dr. Hamdan, about those responsibilities and how that coordination works in Oman so far, but also what's the vision for taking that forward in the future. Dr. Hamdan first, and then we can let Ibtihal reflect if she has reflections. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shea. Answering your question, I would like to highlight again that the committee established by the cabinet, which is called the Social Protection Committee, which I have previously mentioned in my presentation. This is a committee tasked with ensuring proper coordination and integration between different policies and sectors, the sectors that provide social services to beneficiaries and other people in the state. Certainly, there is a lot of coordination between this committee on the one hand and the board of the SPF, as well as the Military and Security Agencies Fund. In terms of the actual implementation of the law, there are challenges that are faced during the implementation process. There are reports submitted by the CEO to the board or from the chairman to the government. These reports would cover all of these elements, challenges, and details. The aforementioned committee will be sparing no efforts to solve these issues and to overcome the obstacles and challenges. That is my answer. Thank you, Shea.
Thank you very much, because I think we talked about disability inclusion, we talked about Cash Plus in the context of the low-income families benefit, but we haven't yet talked about unemployment, activation, labor market, active labor market policies, which are also part of the vision. And I think I'll ask for some reflections. Ibtihal, I don't know if you have a comment on what Dr. Hamdan just said or on intersectoral coordination. We are starting to run out of time, so I've been given a flag by our organizers at sp.org. I think perhaps the best way to close us out is to ask for a comment from each of you, a final comment to really give your perspective or to answer a question that may be pending. We didn't have many questions from the audience, but you all might have some questions or a bit of conversation to have, and I'll have to cut you off in about 4 or 5 minutes. But maybe Ibtihal, why don't we start with you on sort of a final comment on something you meant to say and didn't get out. Over to you.
I think I'll just share the final slide that I didn't get the chance to share, which is the lessons that we've learned through the change journey. One important element that is important is the inclusion of all employees. I'm sorry, I'm speaking in English. So the inclusion of all employees and the support from top management, which helped the journey itself.
Excellent. The importance of leadership. Why don't I move from you to Amer? Do you have a final comment for our audience?
I would like to say that the social protection system came with a lot of optimism. It was greatly welcomed, especially that we were partners in creating this new system. We would like to highlight the necessity for regular follow-up to avoid any challenges when it comes to the implementation. Thank you again for everyone.
Indeed, the importance of social dialogue and in keeping those channels open as you move forward and not just closing them when the reform ends. Thank you. Ernesto, over to you. Final thoughts or even potentially a burning question that may or may not be answered today?
Well, yes, I think for sure, when it's such a rich presentation, the best indication is that there are more questions for sure. And I think, well, a couple that I would leave lingering behind is maybe some of the more unexpected challenges that happened as part of this merger. A lot can be planned before, but as you go along, you realize there are things that you still need to do adjustments. So it would be really fascinating to see and to learn more about potentially things that it would help other institutions take this on. And the other which would be great to learn more about is balancing this integration and adoption of services, both at a branch level and digital level. I'm sure that Ibtihal was mentioning the capacities and skills that people have. It would be really fascinating to see and to hear more about how do we determine who takes the lead or who is this ambassador of change? How do we determine so that there is a balance and this collaboration environment between the merger funds in institutions? So it's anyways, only the hard questions which are great to leave to ponder for us to ponder and to think about.
Thank you, Ernesto. Indeed, I think the MIS aspects, so the vital importance of putting in place those not just human resources, but technological resources that a new institution would rely on, but also taking all of, in the context of the merger, taking all of the sort of baggage and the technological baggage from other institutions and integrating it properly. But then there's also the aspect of integrating across sectors and the case management aspect of linking cash with services. So all of that is really sort of on the agenda and I know is being tackled. We didn't hear so much about it today, but we'll just leave people waiting for the right webinar, probably hosted by Ernesto, where you can dive deep into those details for those of us non-techies. Bilal, I'm going to turn to you for final reflections. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Actually, just I want to reiterate my appreciation for this session. Congratulating colleagues in the Social Protection Fund for really the impressive work they have done. I think this is a key milestone, social protection as a right-based, inclusive right for everyone in Oman with the specific schemes. I look forward to the next milestone where we position social protection to accelerate other key rights. We spoke about disability. We look at further enhancing nutrition and healthy population. Look forward to how advance on the early childhood development, preschool enrollment to increase. There is great potential for us to use the success of the social protection using a cash plus approach. So I really look forward to the next success story on the cash plus, the linkages, the multi-sectorality of how we can engage, the case management, the social workforce, and now from UNICEF and joining recently the office here and joining and being in this beautiful country. I really look forward to supporting these efforts moving forward. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I just would add to that the broader goals that are embedded in Oman Vision 2040, such as employment, diversification, growth. How does this work to move in that direction? So just echoing that. Dr. Hamdan, I don't think we officially gave you the final word. So one more 30-second spot for you, and then we'll move to Majid to close officially the webinar.
Just, in very short, basically, well, thank you very much. Shea, along with your, colleagues and team over there for, organizing this really informative and educative, session. And all hopes that we can, achieve whatever is basically, requested from us in implementing the social, security, in Oman, inshallah, or social protection, sorry, in Oman. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We're comfortable with social security, if you want to use that. In any case, let me hand over as a segue to my colleague, Majid Fathallah, who is regional coordinator here at the ISSA. Majid, over to you. Please give us your final words. I think Majid might have been pulled away from his desk at an inopportune time. There he is. Okay, Majid, here you are.
Sorry for that. No,
that's okay.
It's me. I forget to, but video. Okay, here you go. Thank you very much, Shea. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا أود أولا أن أشكر.
In the name of God, I would like first and foremost
كل السيدات والسادة المتابعين لهذه الحلقة الجديدة
من سلسلة Thank you for attending this new episode of the Arab Social Protection Compass.
أود أن أغير هذا.
I hope that this session was very beneficial to you. I would also like to thank Dr. Hamdan Al-Farsi and Mrs. Ibtihal Al-Riyami from the Social Protection Fund of Oman. Thank you for your valuable presentations. Mr. Amer bin Mansour Al-Azri from the General Federation of Oman Workers, Mr. Bilal Al-Kiswani from UNICEF, as well as my dear colleague Shea, McClanahan, and my colleague Ernesto Brodersohn from the ISSA. I also thank Paulo Martins and the entire team for their valuable contributions. I would like to remind you, for those who have missed the previous series, I would like to remind you of the Arab Social Protection Compass series. This is an initiative launched by the International Labour Organization along with the International Social Security Association in cooperation with socialprotection.org platform. It seeks to shed light on the reforms and programs seeking to integrate social protection in the region. As you know, the majority of the Arab countries have started establishing social protection systems since their independence, and they have achieved major progress since then. Multiple objectives and gains have been achieved, and most importantly, we have seen in the past lack of integration, which led to some weakness at the level of their financial position, and they were unable to include some of the vulnerable categories. That is why multiple Arab countries have launched a reform process. The idea of the Social Protection Compass seeks to shed light on those reforms and to support dialogue on the initiatives taken. We have started first with the experience of the Sultanate of Oman, as Shea said before. We have discussed the experience of Oman in two parts. The first part was the theoretical and the comprehensive reform achieved at the level of social protection in the Sultanate in terms of the vision, strategy, and designing strategies. And then in the second component, which is today, we have focused more on the implementation level to improve governance as well as the discussing the managerial and institutional level. In the middle, we've had a session on the experience of Morocco. in order to share different experiences from different countries, so the participants to present different experiences from multiple countries and multiple social and economic experiences. Certainly, the experience of the Sultanate of Oman is quite important, and we believe that it would have a great value at international fora, for instance, in the Asia-Pacific Forum, which will be held next December. That's all from my side, because I do not want to share a lot of details. But at the end of this session, I would like to invite you to attend the future sessions and encouraging your colleagues to attend. And before I conclude, I would like to give the microphone for Shea to present some additional remarks. Shea.
Really just echoing my thanks to all of you. Congratulations to the Social Protection Fund of the Sultanate of Oman. And I want to invite all of you to please respond to a survey. You'll receive a survey once you leave the webinar, and we're always grateful for feedback so that we can find ways to improve. And as Majid said, continue to spread the word, and we invite you back for next time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks to everyone, and to interpreters and sb.org, of course, in case we haven't mentioned that already. Thank you.